Hey Guitar Geeks, Guitar Guts back with a quick setup guide for Fender Stratocaster guitars. If you already know how to set up your Stratocaster and you've simply forgot the measurements, here they are real quickly. The base of the tremolo should be set 1/8 of an inch off the guitar body. That's 8/64. Depending on what pickups your Stratocaster came with, the pickup height will vary. If you've got vintage Strat pickups, they'll be set 5/64 on the high E and 6/64 on the low E. If you've got Texas Specials or noiseless pickups, they will be set a little bit lower at 6/64 on the high and 8/64 on the low. A modern set of Strat pickups could be set a little bit higher at 4/64 on the high and 5/64 on the low. If your Strat has a humbucker like this one does, Fender recommends 4/64 on both sides, high and low E side. The string height set at the 17th fret. If you have the capo on, like Fender does when they set up their guitars, the high and low E side will be set at 4/64 clearance. With the capo off, your strings are going to come up just a little bit, and you'll have that set at around 4.5/64 on the high E side and 4.5 or 5/64 on the low E side. The relief at the 7th fret should be 10 thousandths, and that's just below 1/64. Now, if you don't know what any of that means, or you're not sure how to go about setting any of that, stick with me here and I'm going to show you exactly how to set each one of those and what they mean. First, you'll need a few simple tools. You'll need some screwdrivers, definitely a Phillips head, and depending on what type of adjustment screws your pickups have, possibly a flathead screwdriver, and then the 2 Allen wrenches that came with your Strat. If you didn't get those or you've lost those, you can always buy a set of varying gauges at the hardware store. And then you'll need a tuner. Now, to start with, we'll come down here to the base of the guitar and look at the tremolo. The tremolo doesn't set flush with the body unless you've got yours locked down. It actually sits up off and floats up off the body a little bit. And Fender recommends that the tremolo base, the base plate, the metal base plate, be 1/8 of an inch off of the wooden body of the guitar in the rear of the tremolo in the back here, 1/8 of an inch. And that's about 8/64. I'm going to be telling you everything in 64s so that you don't have to convert 8ths or 32nds to 64s to keep everything the same, especially if you're using one of the setup gauges. This string action gauge that you can get online fairly cheaply is one of the best tools that you can use to set up any guitar. It's got several measurement scales on it and a conversion table on the back to convert from inches to millimeters, but what you're wanting to use during setups is probably the 64th inch scale on this end of the ruler, and conveniently it's on there either way, left-handed or right-handed, so you can get this ruler out of your way when you're setting up certain things on the guitar, and that's really handy. And down at the bottom there's another scale that has things measured out in thousandths, and you can use that to set up the relief on the neck, and I'll show you that later. But for right now, we're measuring the base of the tremolo down to the guitar body. So you measure that clearance right there. Now, if it's not set properly, you'll have to go into the back of the guitar's tremolo spring cavity and either give it a little bit less tension or more tension in order to make that tremolo tilt. If you need the tremolo to lean forward, to kick up a little bit away from the guitar body, you would loosen the tremolo springs in the back. And if you needed it to lay down and get closer to the guitar body, you need to tighten those tremolo springs down. Don't forget that every time you tighten or loosen those springs, you have to retune the guitar, or you'll be setting it up to something that won't be in tune once you get it adjusted. Once you have that adjusted correctly, 1/8 of an inch off the guitar body, the next thing you'll need to do is install temporarily a capo at the 1st fret. That'll eliminate the nut as a variable in the rest of your measurements that you'll make on two other things on the guitar. If you don't have a capo, you can use a doubled up rubber band right here with a twist tie that you get off a pack of bread, and that'll hold the strings down just fine, or a hair bow with the twist tie holding it tight to the neck. I've even seen some people use low-tack painter's tape there and wrap a few wraps around until the strings are held down at the 1st fret. That eliminates the nut as a variable in measuring the rest of the settings that we're going to make here. let me back up a little bit so you can see what I'm doing down here on this end of the guitar. Remember, we have a capo up at this end of the guitar, and down on the other end, I'm going to use my finger to fret the string at the last fret down here. Now, I've seen some people do it at the 19th fret or even sometimes the 17th fret, but I always fret it at the end of the fretboard, and that turns your string into a straight edge. And we're going to be setting the relief on the neck. That's how much back bow the neck has to give your strings a little bit of clearance to vibrate in the center of the standing wave that they create. So Fender recommends that you set that at 10 thousandths. That's just below, that's just a little less than 1/64. So let me grab my string gauge, and I'm going to come up to the 7th fret and take the string gauge and read from the bottom of the string to the top of the fret. And that should be about 10 thousandths. You should be able to see the little 10 thousandths line under your string. Now, some people set it even higher than that, at 15 thousandths or maybe even as high as 20 thousandths. And if you play your guitar very aggressively, like Stevie Ray Vaughan, you might need that much clearance in the center of your neck. So I'm going to do that on the bass side, and then I'm going to press down again, and I'm going to make the same measurement on the treble side and make sure that I've got practically the same amount of clearance there. If those two measurements are way off, you may have a twist in your neck. Now, if you don't have the little setup guide, there's another way that you can do this without having to buy one of those. Since you're needing 10 thousandths of an inch clearance, it just so happens that a set of 10 gauge strings has a string that's exactly that size. That's the 10 gauge string, which I've got here. Every time you change the strings, you cut off a little bit of leftover string past the string post. And if you save that 10 gauge string, you can use that to measure under the string that you're holding down and see if you've got that much clearance. If you can see that much under it, then you've got 10 thousandths clearance under there. You can even use some of the other gauges if you want a little bit more clearance. There's a 13 and a 17 thousandths that you could use to give yourself a little bit more relief on the neck if you want to do that, and that'll save you having to buy the string gauge if you don't want to. Now, moving on down the neck, after you've set the neck relief. Oh, and by the way, you're setting the neck relief. I should tell you this, I guess. You're setting the neck relief by using the truss rod wrench at the top of the neck. If you're staring down the neck from this direction, then turning the truss rod clockwise will give you less relief, and counterclockwise will give you more relief. And there's several videos out there explaining how that works. But you'll need to use that adjustment wrench to give yourself the proper amount of neck relief. Now, moving on down the fretboard here, coming down to string height, you'll measure that at around the 17th fret. And the string height, Fender uses the capo while they're setting string height, which lowers the string just a little bit, and it does eliminate the nut as a possible variable that could throw this measurement off. So while they've got that capo on, they're measuring 4/64 on the high and the low E string. So you would simply take your string gauge, come down here to the 17th fret, and you'll measure from the bottom of that, from the bottom of that string to the top of the fret. From the bottom of the string to the top of the fret. And you'll do that on both sides. You can actually measure every string that way, and that'll give you the proper radius on the neck without having to buy radius gauges. This little string gauge will act as a radius gauge if you set every string to the same height. Some people vary it a little bit, and they like to have the high E a little bit lower and the low E a little bit higher because you're more likely to bang on those strings a little harder. If you've got the capo off, you'll want to have the strings just a hair higher, and some people like them that low anyway, even with the capo off. So once you get your string gauges, or your string height set, you'll move on to the next one. But before we leave here, let me show you this. If you don't have the string action gauge and you can't measure in 64ths, keep in mind that a nickel is close to 4/64. Not exactly, but that'll get you close to being 4/64. And since that's about what Fender recommends for the string height, a nickel underneath your string and above the fret will give you about the correct string height to start with, and then you can kind of season to taste after that. And again, that'll save you having to purchase the string gauge, which is not too much, but if you don't have the money, a nickel will do. Coming on down to the pickup height. For pickup height, you'll be measuring from the bottom of the string to the top of the pole piece, but you've got to keep in mind that sometimes you'll be playing on down on the fretboard and you'll be fretting the string at the last fret. If you're playing on the 21st or the 22nd fret on a Stratocaster, if you're fretting the string right there, the string's actually much closer to the pickup than it usually is, and you've got to take that into account. So when we're setting pickup height, you always mash down on the last fret so that that string's as close as it can get to the pickup, and then you set the string height or the pickup height from there. So for Fender pickups, they vary based on what type of pickup you're using. I think of the vintage pickups as being kind of standard, 5/64 on the high E and 6/64 on the low. If you have some that are wound a little bit hotter or differently, like the Texas Specials, you want to keep them a little bit lower. Some people have their Texas Specials set even lower than this. And a more modern pickup with a little less string pull, you might get away with 4/64 on the high E and 5/64 on the low, especially if the pickup is a more modern design that doesn't have quite as much string pull or has a flatter stagger to it. The old vintage pickups, the center pole pieces stick up quite a bit, and they can interfere with your string vibration and cause what's called stratitis. I've made another video about that. But when you're measuring the pickup height, you'll mash down on that last fret and then measure from the bottom of the string to the top of the magnet pole piece. And you'll do that on both sides, the high E and the low E, from the bottom of the string to the top of the pole piece. And here's where this little string gauge comes in real handy. If you're trying to measure the next one, the bridge and the humbucker pickup can sometimes get in your way of making an accurate measurement. And so it's very handy to be able to flip this around to where that doesn't get in your way. You can hold the measurement gauge there, press down on the last fret, and the bulk of the ruler doesn't get in your way when you're trying to make that measurement. Now the middle pickup, often people will set that one a little bit lower than the neck pickup just to kind of get it out of the way, and you can kind of tweak the quack that you're getting in the middle positions on your pickup switch by lowering or raising the middle pickup on a Strat. So they don't always set those exactly like Fender specs say. If you've got a humbucker, you're going to measure 4/64 on both sides, and that's done again by pressing the string down at the last fret and measuring between the adjustable pole piece, the ones with the screw head on it, and the bottom of the string. And it'll be 4/64 on both sides. And there you have it. Your Strat should be playing better by now. It should be much more playable. Everything should be set up correctly, and I hope this video has created you a better playing and maybe better sounding Stratocaster guitar. If you liked the video, if you think it helped you, be sure to hit the like button and leave us a comment in the comment section. Thanks for watching. See you again later.